6 months had passed since the last human colony fell to the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kethavar stood in his private chamber aboard the Eternal Dominion, studying holographic maps of the galaxy. Blue lights marked conquered worlds, and there were thousands of them. Only one red dot remained unconquered in this sector of space: Earth. "The human homeworld appears defenseless," reported his intelligence officer, a tall crystal being whose body sparkled with green light. "Our long-range scans show only a few dozen orbital stations and perhaps 30 old warships. Their technology is at least 50 years behind ours." Kethvar smiled, which looked like light dancing across cut glass. "These mammals have been more trouble than expected, but their resistance ends now. Prepare 200 ships for the final assault. I want their homeworld to serve as an example to any other species that might think of defying the Empire." The Admiral turned to look out at the stars through his crystal window. He had conquered 47 different species during his long career. Some had been stronger than humans, others had better technology, but all of them had fallen before the might of the Zephyrian Empire. The humans would be no different. But in the shadow of Jupiter's great red spot, something incredible was taking place. Admiral Lisa Carter floated in zero gravity inside the command center of Omega Base, a massive space station hidden within the gas giant's swirling storms. Around her, thousands of human ships waited in perfect formation, their hulls dark and silent to avoid detection. "Status report on the fleet," Lisa said to her staff officers who floated nearby. She had been planning this moment for 3 years, ever since intelligence reports first warned of the Zephyrian advance toward human space. Commander Danny White consulted his datapad while holding on to a handrail to stay steady. 5,000. 200 ships ready for combat, Admiral. The new stealth technology is working perfectly. Enemy sensors cannot detect us through Jupiter's electromagnetic field. Lisa nodded with satisfaction. While the Zephyrians had been conquering the outer colonies, humanity's best scientists and engineers had been working in secret bases hidden throughout the solar system. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find, learning the Empire's strengths and weaknesses. "What about the new weapon systems?" Lisa asked. "All ships are equipped with kinetic cannons and quantum torpedoes," replied Captain Kate Nelson, who commanded one of the new stealth frigates. "Our tests show that high-speed projectiles can punch right through their energy shields. The aliens have never faced this type of weapon before." On the heavy battleship Defiance, Captain Danny White walked through the ship's massive gun deck. Huge rail cannons lined both sides of the corridor, each one capable of firing tungsten rods at nearly the speed of light. The ship's crew worked quietly, making final preparations for battle. "Chief Engineer Rick Davis, are the new power systems ready?" Danny asked over the ship's communication system. "Yes, sir," came the reply from the engine room. "The fusion reactors are running at 100% efficiency. We can fire continuously for 6 hours without recharging. The Zephyrians won't know what hit them." The Defiance was just one of many new warships built specifically to fight the Empire. Human engineers had designed them with lessons learned from watching other species fall to Zephyrian forces. Where aliens had relied on energy weapons and shields, humans had chosen a different path. 3 decks below, Weapons Officer Sue Johnson ran final checks on the quantum torpedoes. These new missiles use technology reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian equipment, but modified to work in ways the aliens had never imagined. "Each torpedo contains a quantum disruptor warhead," she explained to her weapons team. "When it hits their crystalline hulls, it causes the molecular structure to collapse. One direct hit should turn their biggest ships into space dust." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Engineer Pete Wilson supervised the final assembly of ghost ships. These small frigates were covered in experimental stealth armor that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. They would be humanity's secret weapon in the coming battle. The adaptive camouflage is working beyond our expectations, Pete reported to Admiral Carter during their daily briefing. These ships can mimic space debris or asteroids until they're close enough to attack. The enemy will never see them coming. Back in Zephyrian space, Admiral Kethvar received reports from his scout ships near the Sol system. Everything appeared exactly as his intelligence officers had predicted. Earth's defenses looked weak and outdated, protected only by old space, stations, and a handful of patrol ships. The humans seemed to have given up, his tactical officer observed. Most of their military ships are clustered around their homeworld in a defensive formation. They're waiting for us to come to them. Foolish mammals, Kethvar said with contempt. Do they think their primitive metal ships can stand against the power of the Empire? We will crush them in a single battle and end their resistance forever. But Admiral Lisa Carter was counting on that overconfidence. Human intelligence had been carefully feeding false information to Zephyrian scouts, making Earth's defenses appear much weaker than they really were. The old ships around Earth were real, but they were only a small part of humanity's true military strength. All fleet commanders, report to the briefing room, Lisa announced over the base communication system. It's time for the final mission briefing. In the huge briefing chamber, captains and admirals from across the hidden fleet gathered to hear their orders. The room buzzed with quiet conversation as officers discussed the upcoming battle. Many of them had lost friends and family in the outer colonies. This was their chance for revenge. The enemy fleet will arrive at Earth in 72 hours, Lisa began, standing before a large display screen showing the solar system. Our scouts report exactly 200 Zephyrian ships, including their flagship Eternal Dominion. They believe they're attacking a defenseless world. She pressed a button, and the display changed to show the real positions of human forces. Gasps filled the room as officers saw the true size of their fleet for the first time. We have been preparing for this moment since the war began, Lisa continued. Every ship lost, every colony burned, every life sacrificed has led to this. The Zephyrians think they know everything about human military capability. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Captain Grace Kelly, commander of the stealth ship Shadow, raised her hand. What are our rules of engagement, Admiral? Lisa's expression hardened. No quarter, no mercy. They showed none to our people, and we will show none to them. When this battle is over, the galaxy will know that humanity cannot be conquered. The officers began to file out, returning to their ships to make final preparations. In less than 3 days, the largest space battle in human history would begin. The Zephyrian Empire thought they were coming to destroy the last human stronghold. Instead, they were flying into a trap that would change the course of galactic history forever. The morning sky over New Dallas burned red as alien ships dropped from the clouds like falling stars. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the command deck of the Human Defense Station, watching his world die through the large windows. Smoke rose from the city below, where millions of people lived just hours before. Sir, we have incoming fighters on the east side, Lieutenant Amy Brooks called out from her position at the communications desk. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she tried to contact the remaining defense teams scattered across the planet. Jake pressed his lips together and nodded. The Zephyrian Empire had come to their world without warning, just like they had done to dozens of other human colonies over the past 6 months. These crystal-bodied aliens ruled most of the galaxy with their powerful energy weapons and shields that seemed impossible to break. How many evacuation ships made it out? Jake asked, while explosions lit up the horizon. The alien fighters moved through the air like deadly birds, their weapons turning buildings into ash and rubble. About 40% of the civilian transports got away before they cut off our escape routes, Amy replied. She paused to listen to a message coming through her headset. Captain, the spaceport is under heavy attack. They need immediate support or we'll lose the last shuttle bay. Jake looked at his small team of officers and soldiers. Most of them were young, barely out of training. None of them had ever faced an enemy like this before. The Zephyrians had been conquering worlds for thousands of years, and their technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. "Tell all units to fall back to the spaceport," Jake ordered. "We can't save the city, but we can save lives." 3 miles away, Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his massive ship, the Eternal Dominion. The crystalline structure of his vessel gleamed in the light of the burning planet below. His long, thin body reflected light like a living jewel, and his 4 arms moved gracefully as he gave orders to his crew. "These humans are more stubborn than the previous species we conquered," he said to his second officer, whose crystal skin glowed with a blue light. "Their metal ships break easily, but they keep fighting even when defeat is certain." "Should we spare some of them for work slaves?" the second officer asked. "The mining colonies always need more workers." Kethvar considered this while watching. Human fighter planes tried desperately to damage his ship. Their primitive missiles exploded harmlessly against his energy shields. "Perhaps a few thousand. The rest are of no use to the Empire." Back on the planet's surface, Jake and his team fought their way through the burning streets toward the spaceport. Alien fighters screamed overhead, their energy beams turning vehicles into melted metal. Citizens ran in panic, carrying whatever, belongings they could save from their destroyed homes. "This way!" shouted Sergeant Bill Thompson, pointing toward a side street that seemed clear of enemy fire. He carried an injured civilian on his back while his rifle hung ready at his side. "The main road is blocked by wreckage." Amy stayed close behind Jake, her communication equipment crackling with desperate messages from around the planet. "Captain, I'm getting reports from other colonies. 17 worlds have gone dark in the past week. Earth Command thinks we might be the last ones in this sector." Jake felt his heart sink. He had hoped that other human forces might come to help them, but it seemed like the Zephyrians were attacking everywhere at once. Their empire stretched across most of the galaxy, and they had been crushing resistance for longer than humans had been building spaceships. At the spaceport, chaos filled the air. Hundreds of people crowded around the last few transport ships, desperate to escape before the aliens destroyed the landing platforms. Children cried while their parents pushed through the crowds, and elderly people struggled to keep up with the rushing mob. "Get the wounded on first," Jake ordered as his team reached the shuttle bays. "Then families with children. Everyone else will have to wait for the next transport." But even as he spoke, Jake knew there might not be a next transport. Zephyrian fighters circled the spaceport like sharks, picking off any ship that tried to leave the atmosphere. Only the fastest and luckiest transports made it past their energy weapons. Lieutenant Commander Kate Nelson piloted one of the last human fighters still in the air. Her small ship dodged between alien vessels, trying to draw their fire away from the evacuation shuttles. She had been flying for 6 hours straight, and her fuel was almost gone. "Control, this is Falcon 7, she radioed to the spaceport. "I count at least 50 enemy fighters in the area. The transports won't make it out without cover." "Falcon 7, we have no more fighters to send," came the reply from ground control. "You're on your own up there." Kate gritted her teeth and pushed her engines to maximum power. If she was going to die today, she would take as many alien ships with her as possible. Her missiles found their targets, but for every Zephyrian fighter she destroyed, 3 more took its place. Meanwhile, in the deepest parts of space beyond the outer planets, Admiral Lisa Carter received an emergency message on her secret communication system. She stood in the command center of a hidden base that the Zephyrians had never found, surrounded by officers who had been planning for this day for 3 years. "New Dallas has fallen," reported Commander Danny White, reading from the message display. Captain Martinez and his team managed to evacuate about 60,000 civilians before the spaceport was destroyed. Lisa nodded grimly. She had expected this news, but it still hurt to lose another human world. Each fallen colony meant millions of lives lost or enslaved by the Empire, But their sacrifice would not be meaningless. "Send the coded message to all hidden bases," Lisa ordered. "Tell them that Phase 1 is complete. The Zephyrians think they have broken our spirit, but they have only awakened our anger." The message went out across space through secret channels that the Empire had never discovered. On hidden worlds and secret stations, human crews began preparing ships and weapons that had been built in darkness over the past 3 years. The Zephyrians believed they faced a weak enemy armed with primitive technology. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Back on New Dallas, Jake stood in the ruins of his command post as alien soldiers marched through the burning city. The crystal-bodied warriors moved with mechanical precision, rounding up the surviving humans for transport to slave camps. Jake had managed to save thousands of lives, but millions more were lost forever. As he watched his world burn, Jake made a silent promise. Somehow, somewhere, humanity would find a way to make the Zephyrian Empire pay for what they had done. The aliens thought they had won. But this was only the beginning of a much larger war. The fallen worlds would be remembered, and they would be avenged. The UNS Defiance accelerated toward Earth at maximum burn, its massive engines pushing the ship faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. Captain Ryan Mitchell watched the alien fleet grow larger on his screens as they closed the distance for their final attack. 300 Zephyrian ships waited in perfect formation, their weapons pointed at the planet below like loaded guns aimed at humanity's heart. Admiral Kethvar tracked the approaching human warship with growing confidence. The alien commander had positioned his fleet exactly where he wanted it. The humans would have to choose between attacking his ships and saving their own people. Either way, the Zephyrians would win. "Maintain targeting on all population centers," Kethvar ordered his fleet. "The moment that ship enters weapons range, begin planetary bombardment. Show these humans the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire." On the bridge of the Defiance, Dr. Sam Collins made final adjustments to the resonance frequency calculations. The ship's exotic matter reactors were already straining beyond their design limits, feeding massive amounts of energy into systems that had never been tested under combat conditions. Steam and sparks filled the engineering sections as the ship prepared to push itself beyond the breaking point. Chief Engineer Greg Sullivan watched his control panels with steady hands, even though he knew the next few minutes would be his last. The reactor overload sequence was ready to begin. Once started, there would be no way to stop the chain reaction that would tear the ship apart from the inside. "Reactors are at maximum safe output," Greg reported. "Beginning overload sequence in 60 seconds. After that, we'll have maybe 5 minutes before the cores go critical." Lieutenant Amy Foster locked onto her targets, the alien ships that surrounded Earth like a metal cage. Her weapon systems showed ready status, but she knew they would only get one chance to fire. The resonance pulse had to work perfectly, or billions of people would die. Commander Kate Williams stood beside Captain Mitchell as they approached the point of no return. She had served with him for 15 years through exploration missions that had taken them farther from home than any humans had ever traveled. Now they were about to die together, defending the world that had sent them to the stars. In the underground bunkers of Earth, the Resistance watched the final approach with hope and fear. Jake Harrison coordinated with surviving military units around the world, preparing for the moment when the alien ships would lose their shields. If the Defiance succeeded, the Resistance would need to move quickly to capture disabled enemy vessels. Lisa Harrison treated the last of the wounded fighters, knowing that in a few minutes the battle would be over one way or another. Her medical training had taught her to save lives, but today the greatest act of healing would come from destroying the ships that held her world prisoner. Ben Carter monitored alien communications, listening to the confusion and worry in Zephyrian command frequencies. The aliens knew something was wrong, but they could not understand what the human ship was planning. Their technology was advanced, but it was also predictable. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The Defiance reached optimal range for the resonance pulse just as Admiral Kethvar gave the order to begin bombardment. Plasma beams lanced down from the alien fleet toward Earth's major cities, but the shots never reached their targets. Dr. Collins activated the resonance weapon at the exact moment the enemy opened fire. The pulse erupted from the Defiance like a wave of invisible energy washing over the Zephyrian fleet in seconds. The resonance frequency was perfectly tuned to collapse the alien shield matrix, but it did much more than that. The pulse also disrupted the command network that linked all the enemy ships together. One by one, the Zephyrian vessels went dark, as their shields failed and their power systems crashed. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as 3 centuries of technological superiority vanished in an instant. His flagship lost power along with the rest of the fleet, leaving 300 warships floating helpless in Earth's orbit, but the resonance pulse came at a terrible price. The reactor overload that generated the energy wave was consuming the Defiance from within. Explosions rocked the ship as exotic matter containment fields collapsed and energy systems overloaded. The vessel that had traveled between stars for 20 years was tearing itself apart. Captain Ryan Mitchell felt the ship shuddering around him as bulkheads buckled and systems failed. Emergency lights flickered in the smoke-filled bridge as his crew worked at their stations until the very end. They had done the impossible, defeated an enemy that outnumbered them 300 to 1. All stations, this is the captain, Ryan, transmitted on all frequencies. Mission accomplished. Earth is free. It has been an honor serving with all of you. Chief Engineer Greg Sullivan died at his post as the engineering section exploded around him. Dr. Sam Collins was killed when the laboratory containing his resonance equipment vaporized. Lieutenant Amy Foster and Commander Kate Williams remained at their stations as the bridge collapsed, dying alongside the man they had followed across the galaxy. The UNS Defiance broke apart in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. The ship that had carried humanity's hopes for 20 years was gone, taking 800 heroes with it into the darkness of space. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. On Earth, the Resistance emerged from their bunkers to coordinate the capture of disabled alien vessels. Jake Harrison led teams of fighters as they boarded Zephyrian ships and took their crews prisoner. The aliens, so confident in their technological superiority, surrendered without fighting when faced with the reality of their defeat. Ben Carter established contact with human colonies on Mars and the outer planets, spreading the news that Earth had been liberated. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying word that humanity had not only survived, but triumphed against impossible odds. Lisa Harrison organized medical teams to treat both human survivors and alien prisoners. The invasion was over, but the work of rebuilding would take years. Billions of people needed food, shelter, and medical care. Cities had to be rebuilt, governments restored, and the damage of 3 months of war repaired. But humanity had learned something important about their place in the galaxy. They were not the weakest species among the stars. They were not defenseless against more advanced civilizations. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans had found the strength to fight back and win. From the wreckage of the Defiance, automated beacons began broadcasting a message to any alien species that might be listening. The words were simple, but carried a warning that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. Humanity protects its own. Attack us at your peril. For we will never surrender, never give up, and never stop fighting for our freedom. Earth was free, and the age of human expansion among the stars could finally begin. The invasion was over, and humanity had won. The Zephyrian ultimatum crackled across every radio frequency in the solar system. Admiral Kethvar's voice was cold and certain as he delivered his final demands to the approaching human warship. Surrender immediately, or watch Earth burn under. Orbital bombardment. Every major city, every population center, every human settlement would be destroyed if the Defiance came any closer. Captain Ryan Mitchell listened to the alien message with growing anger. His enemy was using billions of innocent people as human shields, threatening to commit genocide unless he backed down. The Zephyrian fleet had positioned itself in a perfect defensive formation around Earth, making it impossible to attack without risking massive civilian casualties. On Earth, the resistance fighters in their underground bunkers heard the alien threat with despair. Jake Harrison stared at his tactical displays, watching the enemy ships spread out across Earth's orbital space. Every alien vessel had its weapons pointed down at the planet, ready to rain death on defenseless cities. They mean it, Ben Carter said, his voice barely a whisper. The power readings from their weapons. They could kill everyone. Millions of people would die in the first few minutes. Lisa Harrison continued treating wounded fighters, but her hands were shaking as she worked. She had seen enough death during the invasion to know that the aliens were not making empty threats. They had already proven they were willing to kill civilians to achieve their goals. Admiral Kethvar felt confident in his strategy. The human ship was powerful, more powerful than anything he had ever faced, but humans were weak when it came to protecting their own kind. They would sacrifice themselves rather than allow innocent people to die. This emotional weakness would be their downfall. Maintain position, he ordered his fleet commanders. Keep all weapons targeted on population centers. If that ship moves within firing range, begin the bombardment immediately. On the Defiance, Dr. Sam Collins worked frantically in his laboratory, trying to solve an impossible puzzle. The resonance frequency that could collapse the alien shields required precise calculations that pushed the limits of human science. One mistake, one wrong number, and the entire plan would fail. Chief Engineer Greg Sullivan monitored the ship's reactor systems as they prepared for the most dangerous operation in human history. The exotic matter cores that powered the Defiance were already running beyond their design limits. Overloading them completely might tear the ship apart before the resonance pulse could be generated. How much time do we have? Greg asked over the communication system. Dr. Collins wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his calculations for the 100th time. The alien ships are using a shared shield frequency of 2.7 terahertz. If I can modulate our reactor output to create a standing wave at exactly that frequency, it should cascade through their entire defensive grid. Lieutenant Amy Foster ran tactical simulations, trying to predict the outcome of their desperate plan. The numbers were not encouraging. Even if the resonance pulse worked perfectly, the Defiance would be defenseless during the charging cycle. The aliens could destroy them before the weapon could fire. Commander Kate Williams studied the enemy formation, looking for weaknesses that might give them an advantage. She had been Ryan's second-in-command for 15 years, and her tactical experience had saved the ship many times during their deep space mission. But this situation was unlike anything they had ever faced. "Captain," she said quietly, "even if we succeed in collapsing their shields, we'll be destroyed in the process. The reactor overload will consume the ship from the inside out. There's no way to survive what we're planning." Ryan nodded grimly. He had already accepted that his ship and crew would not survive this battle, but their sacrifice might save billions of innocent people and free Earth from alien rule. Some prices were worth paying, no matter how high. Dr. Peter Young, the ship's chief medical officer, prepared his medical bay for what he knew would be the final casualties of their long journey. He was a quiet man who had spent 20 years caring for the crew of the Defiance. Now he was preparing to die alongside the people he had kept alive for so long. On Earth, the Resistance tried to coordinate with the approaching warship. Jake Harrison established secure communications with Captain Mitchell, sharing intelligence about the alien fleet positions and civilian population centers that needed protection. "We have maybe 2 million people left in the Chicago area," Jake reported. "New York has about 500,000 survivors in the underground shelters. Los Angeles, There's almost nothing left. They hit it with everything they had during the first week. Ryan felt the weight of those numbers pressing down on him. Every delay meant more human lives lost to the ongoing occupation. Every minute they spent planning was another minute of alien rule. But rushing into battle without proper preparation would only make things worse. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ben Carter, monitoring alien communications from his underground bunker, detected something important in the Zephyrian. Command frequencies. The alien ships were not just sharing shield harmonics, they were also linked through a central command network that coordinated their movements. Captain Mitchell, Ben transmitted excitedly. I think I found something. The alien fleet is using a unified command structure. All their ships are connected through a single communication network. If your resonance pulse disrupts that network along with their shields, it might create a cascade failure in their entire tactical system. Dr. Collins seized on this new information, quickly revising his calculations. If they could target both, the shield frequency and the command network simultaneously, the effect would be even more devastating than originally planned. The alien ships would not only lose their defenses, they would lose their ability to coordinate attacks. I can do it, he announced over the ship's communication system. But the power requirements are even higher than before. We'll need to overload both reactor cores completely. The ship definitely won't survive. Throughout the Defiance, 800 crew members prepared for their final mission. They had volunteered for a 20-year exploration mission that had turned into humanity's last hope for survival. In engineering, in weapons control, in navigation, men and women who had spent 2 decades in deep space made peace with their approaching deaths. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on his bridge, surrounded by the people who had become his family during their long journey through the stars. Commander Kate Williams, Lieutenant Amy Foster, Chief Engineer Greg Sullivan, Dr. Sam Collins, and all the others who had shared the wonders and dangers of exploring the unknown. All stations report ready, Kate announced. Reactor overload sequence is prepared. Resonance pulse calculations are complete. We can fire on your command. Ryan looked at the tactical display showing Earth surrounded by alien ships. His home world was beautiful even in defeat, a blue jewel that had given birth to the species that would soon reclaim their freedom. The Defiance began its final approach, racing against time and impossible odds. For Earth, Ryan said quietly. For humanity. For everyone we're leaving behind. The countdown to humanity's salvation had begun. The UNS Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system like a giant emerging from the darkness. The human warship was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers of black metal and strange weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Energy crackled along its hull as exotic matter reactors powered systems that bent the laws of physics. Admiral Kethvar stared at his main display in shock. The human ship was larger than his flagship, larger than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. Weapon ports lined its hull like the teeth of some mechanical beast. Energy readings showed power levels that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. Analysis complete, Admiral, his science officer reported with fear in his voice. The vessel appears to be human in design, but using technology, far beyond what we encountered during the invasion. Its armor is composed of materials unknown to our databases. Its weapons... I cannot identify their operating principles. Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds, defeated hundreds of species. They had always won through superior technology and overwhelming force. But this single human ship was making his entire fleet nervous. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien fleet react to his arrival. 300 enemy ships were moving to intercept him, their formations tight and disciplined. He had expected this. What he had not expected was how small the alien vessels looked compared to his own ship. Tactical report, he ordered, his voice calm despite the impossible odds they faced. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked quickly at her station, analyzing the enemy ships with sensors that could see through solid matter. "I count 312 vessels, Captain. They're using energy shields and plasma-based weapons. Their hulls appear to be standard durasteel alloy. Nothing we can't handle." Chief Engineer Greg Sullivan reported from the engine room that all systems were running at full power. The exotic matter reactors that drove the Defiance were operating beyond normal parameters, feeding energy to weapons that existed only in theory when the ship left Earth 20 years ago. The first engagement came when a squadron of 20 Zephyrian ships moved to block the Defiance's path toward Earth. They opened fire with plasma cannons that had destroyed human fleets, brilliant beams of superheated gas that could melt through the armor of any known vessel. The alien weapons struck the Defiance's hull and simply vanished. The ship's experimental armor plating absorbed the energy and converted it into harmless radiation. The human warship did not even slow down. Ryan smiled grimly. "Return fire. Show them what human engineering can do." Amy Foster pressed the firing. Controls, and the Defiance unleashed hell. Particle beam weapons tore through space, destabilizing matter at the quantum level. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers punched through alien hulls like bullets through paper. The 20 Zephyrian ships exploded in seconds. Their shields, so effective against primitive human weapons, offered no protection against technology that attacked the basic structure of reality itself. Burning wreckage scattered across space as the Defiance continued its approach toward Earth. The planet below, the Resistance watched their tactical displays in amazement. Jake Harrison could hardly believe the readings his instruments were showing. The single human ship was destroying alien vessels faster than his computers could track. "Those power readings can't be right," Ben Carter said, staring at his screens. "No ship can generate that much energy. It's impossible." Lisa Harrison treated wounded Resistance fighters while keeping one eye on the tactical display. She had studied physics in medical school and knew enough to understand that what they were seeing broke every known law of science. "Maybe impossible is just another word for something we haven't figured out yet," she said. Above them, Admiral Kethvar watched his outer patrol groups die with growing horror. The human ship was not just larger and more powerful than expected. It was using weapons and defenses that his science teams could not even understand. Every shot from the Defiance destroyed another Zephyrian vessel. "Pull back the patrol groups," he ordered. "Concentrate the fleet in Earth orbit. Use the planet as cover." It was a desperate move, but Kethvar was an experienced commander who had survived many battles. If he could not defeat this human ship in open space, he would force it to fight, on his terms. The Defiance might be powerful, but surely it would not risk destroying the very planet it had come to save. The Zephyrian fleet retreated toward Earth, forming a defensive shell around the planet. 300 ships created an almost solid wall of metal and energy weapons, daring the human warship to approach. Behind them, the blue world that had once been humanity's home hung in space like a prize waiting to be claimed. Captain Ryan Mitchell studied the new alien formation with experienced eyes. His enemy was smart, using Earth itself as a shield. The Defiance could punch through that defensive line, but not without risking damage to the planet below. Stray shots could kill millions of innocent people. Commander Kate Williams joined him at the tactical display. She was his most trusted officer, a woman who had shared the dangers of deep space exploration for 15 years. Her advice had saved the ship many times during their long journey. "They're using our own people against us," she observed. "Classic defensive strategy. Force the attacker to fight at a disadvantage or risk harming what they're trying to protect." Dr. Sam Collins, the ship's chief scientist, had been analyzing the alien shield frequencies since the first engagement. He was a thin man with wild gray hair who understood theoretical physics better than anyone alive. His discoveries during their 20-year journey had made many of the Defiance's weapons possible. "I might have a solution," he announced, his voice excited. The Zephyrian energy shields all operate on the same base frequency. If we could generate a resonance pulse at exactly the right wavelength, we could collapse their entire defensive grid simultaneously. Greg Sullivan looked up from his engineering displays. That would require overloading our main reactor. The ship might not survive the energy discharge. Ryan considered the options. They could break through the alien line by force, but Earth would suffer massive damage from the battle. They could try surgical strikes, but that would take time the planet did not have. Or they could risk everything on an untested theory that might save both Earth and destroy the alien fleet. "How long do you need to set up this resonance pulse?" he asked Dr. Collins. 30 minutes to recalibrate the reactor, another 10 minutes to charge the system. After that, the scientist shrugged. "Either it works and we save Earth or we die trying." Ryan looked around the bridge at the men and women who had followed him across the galaxy. They had spent 20 years in the dark between stars, exploring wonders that no human had ever seen. Now they were home, and their world needed them. "Do it," he ordered. "Prepare the resonance pulse. All hands, this is the captain. We're going to try something that's never been done before. If it works, Earth goes free. If it doesn't, well, we've had a good run." The Defiance began its final approach toward Earth, racing against time to save humanity from extinction.